"Please don't close the store. My son needs more blanket," said a single mom to the CEO Undercover. Winter had settled into the city with sharp certainty. Snow blanketed sidewalks and rooftops, piling high and hiding the concrete beneath pure, icy white. The wind sliced through alleyways like glass, biting through coats and scarves without mercy. Christmas lights blinked cheerfully across downtown storefronts, a bright contrast to the bitter air. In the wealthier parts of town, families rushed through shopping centers, arms full of gifts and peppermint drinks. But in quieter neighborhoods behind crumbling brick and narrow roads, frost and silence prevailed. Dim lights flickered behind old curtains. Heat was scarce. Joy felt far away. Linda Thompson, 28, walked carefully down one of those back streets. Her boots left shallow prints in the snow. A faded green coat, frayed at the shoulders, clung tightly to her figure. Her blonde hair was pulled back, loose strands escaping her knit beanie. In her arms, a cloth tote held discounted groceries, a can of soup, bread, and a half-price bag of frozen vegetables. Exhaustion showed in her posture, in her slow steps, in the pale shadows beneath her eyes. Still, she wore a gentle smile. She made her way home in silence, the cold pressing against her skin. Inside, though, her thoughts were anything but quiet. Her 6-year-old son Eli had been coughing again. It started 2 weeks ago, with the first snow, and hadn't stopped. He had asthma, chronic and worst in the cold. Their apartment was drafty. The heater sputtered. Windows were sealed with tape. She had patched Eli's blanket twice, but it was too thin. "I just need one more paycheck," she murmured, breath clouding the air. "Then I can buy him that second blanket." The scene shifted. At the edge of her neighborhood stood a small department store, its windows dull, its aisles poorly lit. Plastic bins of tangled holiday decorations sat untouched. Metal shelves stood unevenly stocked. The store was one of many low-performing locations in a national chain. Linda worked there, night shift, in the stockroom. No benefits. She lifted boxes, sorted misplaced goods, filled in for others. She never complained. She just worked, hands busy, always moving, always carrying more than just merchandise. Tonight was no different. She moved through the back aisles, fixing displays others had ignored. No one noticed. She didn't expect them to. But behind the scenes, decisions were being made. Downtown, in a boardroom of glass and chrome, Mason Reeves, 35, sat at the head of a long table. The city shimmered beyond him, but he didn't look up. His laptop glowed with charts and numbers, red arrows, shrinking margins. "This store's been under for 3 quarters now," someone said. Mason didn't flinch. "Close it." No questions. No hesitation. He wasn't unkind, but he was cold, cold-worked. Feelings didn't belong in spreadsheets. Raised in wealth but not in warmth, Mason had learned early that people were unreliable. Numbers were not. But under mounting pressure, from shareholders, media, and a new PR director, the company had launched a campaign, CEO Undercover. Mason resisted, but eventually he agreed. 1 store, 1 week. He would pose as a frontline worker to gain perspective. A formality, really. A final audit before shutting the door. He picked the lowest-ranking location on the list. He didn't know the staff, only the code number. Just another underperforming store with outdated systems and weak sales. Just numbers. That night, as snow returned, Mason arrived. He wore a simple coat. His name tag read Jason. No one greeted him. No fanfare. He stepped through the sliding doors into flickering lights and quiet aisles. Just another man with a clipboard and a cover story. But this time, something was different. Because inside that failing store was a woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile. A boy with patched blankets and quiet dreams. And for the first time in his career, Mason Reeves was about to meet people not as data points, but as something real. Snow fell thick outside, layering the parking lot in quiet white. It was late, past 9 p.m., but inside the small department store, the overhead lights still buzzed, dim and yellow. The warmth indoors was faint, barely keeping the cold from seeping in through the back doors. In the storage area, Linda Thompson moved from shelf to shelf with practiced ease, clipboard in hand, scanning barcodes and making notes. She was almost finished with inventory for the night when she caught sight of someone struggling in the corner near aisle 6. The new guy. He was crouched awkwardly beside a stack of misaligned boxes, trying to make sense of a reorder form that clearly didn't match the labels. His hair was dusted with snow, he had probably just come in, and his thin gloves looked more suited for someone used to typing, not handling frozen plastic totes. Linda hesitated for half a second. No one else was paying attention. Most of the night crew had either finished their tasks or were on break. She stepped toward him quietly. "You'll want to rotate that chart the other way," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Makes it easier for both customers and inventory." The man looked up, a little startled. Then he nodded. "Thanks," he replied. His voice was even, calm, but something in his eyes registered surprise. Not because she helped, but because she did so without judgment. Linda didn't linger. She adjusted a few boxes, pointed out the updated label system, then moved on. Mason watched her go. He didn't know her name yet, but she was already different. She didn't scold, she didn't sigh or make a show of being smarter. She simply helped, then returned to work, efficient, silent, invisible in a way he hadn't expected. He had met dozens of store-level employees over the years. Most either complained or looked past people like him, but this woman, she noticed. Over the next half hour, Mason observed more quietly. She rearranged a toppled display, retaped a torn package, gently reminded a coworker to clock out on time. No orders, no applause, just quiet diligence. She had a presence, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. Later that night, Mason sat alone in the back office, really just a converted storage room with a laptop and a flickering desk lamp. He scrolled through spreadsheets, tracking performance metrics for the location. He had already made his decision. The store was failing. Numbers did not lie. But when the door creaked slightly open and Linda appeared in the frame, something shifted. She stood in the doorway, one hand still clutching her tote bag. Her coat was zipped, ready to leave, but her gaze fell on him, not accusing, not pleading, just human. She stepped in, hesitated, then spoke clearly. "Please, don't close the store. My son needs more blanket. He's been coughing all week. I'm saving up for one more." Mason blinked. He looked at her fully now. Her face was pale from the cold, her hair damp at the edges, but her voice didn't waver. There were no tears, no theatrics. She wasn't begging to keep her job for herself. She was speaking as a mother, one who simply wanted to keep her child warm through the worst winter in years. The silence stretched. Mason felt the words rise to his lips. "Do you know who I am?" But he didn't say it, because clearly, she didn't. And somehow, that mattered more than it should have. Linda gave a small nod, as if that was all she came to say. Then she turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind her. Mason sat still, the light from the laptop screen casting harsh shadows across his face. The numbers blurred, the profit margins faded, and all that remained was the echo of her words and the quiet image of a little boy shivering under a too-thin blanket. He leaned back in the chair, fingers tapping slowly against the desk. "Why is a blanket making me hesitate?" he wondered. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless, silent. Mason stood up, walked to the window, and watched the snow swirl beneath the parking lot lights. Something small, almost imperceptible, had begun to crack inside him. After that quiet conversation in the back office, Mason Reeves found himself doing something he hadn't done in years. He started noticing. Not data, not spreadsheets, people. More specifically, her. He never asked her name. He didn't need to. The blonde woman with the quiet eyes and tired smile was always just there. One evening, Mason watched as Linda threaded a needle under the break room light, mending a tear in a teenage coworker's coat. The boy had been too embarrassed to ask for help, but Linda noticed. She didn't say much, just handed him back the coat, stitched with care. The stitching wasn't perfect, but it was warm. Another night, during a busy restocking shift, she quietly split her sandwich in half when she saw one of the cashiers sitting alone without lunch. No announcement. No, look at me. Just half a sandwich passed across the table. Then there was the time she stayed late to reorganize a storage rack that had collapsed under its own weight. No one had asked her to. No manager had even seen it, but Mason had. And never, not once, did she complain. No dramatic sighs, no passive-aggressive remarks, just quiet effort. Mason kept his distance, always watching from the corner of his eye, clipboard in hand, pretending to tally boxes while wondering why this one employee, out of hundreds, felt like a wrinkle in his otherwise smooth equation. He told himself it was curiosity, until he saw the notebook. It was late, almost midnight. The break room was empty except for Linda, sitting in the corner with a steaming mug of weak tea. Her coat draped over the back of her chair, her posture tired but upright. Mason passed by the door and paused. She had a small notebook in her lap, worn at the edges, held together by a rubber band. She flipped it open, pen tapping the page as she reviewed notes by the dim light. From where he stood, unnoticed, Mason could make out scribbles across several pages. Tips for managing childhood asthma, homemade remedies for night coughs, checklists for keeping a small apartment warm without raising the heating bill. One page caught his attention. It was titled simply, Eli's Wishes. A child's handwriting filled the lines beneath. I want one more blanket that's not ripped. I want Mom to stop coughing. I want Mom to have one day off, but still get paid. Mason swallowed hard. Linda closed the book gently and stood up, stretching slightly. She didn't know anyone had seen. After she left, Mason stepped into the break room, hesitated, then picked up the notebook she'd left on the table for a moment. He didn't open it again. He only looked at the back page, where in faded ink, a message was written in her handwriting. I won't let my son grow up in the cold, even if the world turns its back. He placed the notebook exactly where it had been. That line stayed with him like a whisper under the skin. A few days later, Mason sat in a conference room at headquarters, surrounded by his top-level management team. Laptops glowed around the table, coffee cups were half empty. Voices were sharp, fast, efficient. They were reviewing the underperforming locations. The store Linda worked at came up fast. Close it before the holidays, one manager said. We'll save Q1 overhead. It's been bleeding for years, another chimed in. No seasonal bump, no growth. It's a liability. Then someone added flatly, we're not a charity. We can't save the world, Mason. Mason didn't respond immediately. He looked down at the printed report in front of him. Numbers, red marks, profit losses. But his mind didn't see columns anymore. He saw a woman in a fraying coat, slipping cough syrup into her tote bag instead of buying dinner. He saw a child curled up with a towel instead of a blanket. He saw hands mending coats and sharing food without needing to be thanked. The numbers hadn't changed, but he had. The conversation moved on. No one noticed that Mason hadn't agreed to the closure. He remained quiet, fingers steepled, eyes distant. And for the first time in his career, the question he was asking himself wasn't, what's the cost? It was, what if we've been calculating the wrong value all along? Linda showed up to work with dark circles under her eyes, and a pale complexion makeup couldn't hide. Her shoulders slumped a little more than usual. Still, she greeted everyone with a soft smile and a quiet, "Good evening," as she clocked in for her night shift. One of the younger cashiers leaned toward her in the back hallway. "Rough night?" Linda offered a small nod and pulled her coat tighter. "Eli's been coughing all night. I just need to make it through this week. Then I can finally buy that thicker blanket." She said it like it was nothing, like it was a goal, like saving for shoes or a movie ticket. But Mason heard her from the back room. He wasn't supposed to be listening, but he couldn't help it anymore. He paused in his data entry, her voice echoing louder than the spreadsheets. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't asking for help. She was surviving on hope, grit, and every cent she could stretch. That night, Mason stayed late. Long after the shift ended, after Linda had gone home, he stood alone in the break room, staring at the lockers. He'd memorized which one was hers, number 14. A peeling sticker of a smiling sun clung to the corner. He slipped a small paper bag into the locker. Nothing big, nothing dramatic. Just a bottle of herbal cough syrup, a new pair of soft, insulated gloves, and a handwritten card on thick, cream-colored paper. He didn't sign it. He only wrote, "Some people work miracles every day. They just don't wear capes." The next evening, Linda opened her locker and froze. She stared at the items inside, blinking like she wasn't sure they were real. Her fingers touched the gloves first, then the card. She read the message once, then again, then closed her eyes. She didn't cry, but her lips pressed tightly and her chest lifted in a sharp, silent breath. For a long moment, she just stood there, holding the card to her chest, looking up at the ceiling as if searching for an answer. Mason watched from a distance, hidden by the stockroom door. He didn't want her to know it was him. It wasn't about credit, or even kindness. It was about seeing someone. And for the first time, he remembered his mother's hands. Calloused from long shifts as a nurse, always warm, always there. He remembered being wrapped in a thin blanket on a freezing night, her arms pulling him close. "If you're warm, sweetheart," she'd whispered, "then I'm warm too." The memory sat heavy in his chest. The next day, disaster struck. It was just after 3 p.m. when Linda's phone rang during her shift. She rarely took calls, but her face paled when she saw the number. A moment later, she was already running. "Eli had an asthma attack," she told her supervisor. "They called from daycare. I have to go, now." Before anyone else could react, Mason stepped forward. "I'll drive you." Linda blinked, surprised. But she didn't question it. She nodded once and grabbed her coat. They didn't speak much during the drive. Snow had started falling again, soft and steady. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full. Full of unspoken things. Worry, regret, and something neither dared name. At the clinic, Linda jumped out as soon as they arrived. Mason parked and followed, keeping a respectful distance. From the hallway, he watched her sit beside the exam table, holding Eli's hand as he breathed through the nebulizer. Her back was straight, her voice calm, but her eyes gave her away, brimming with fear and fierce love. Mason didn't ask about the chart or the cost. He just watched, a woman carrying the weight of 2 lives without ever asking for less snow. And in that sterile hallway, something shifted. He thought about boardrooms, budgets, store closures, decisions made from far above the lives they crushed. He thought about cold, and realized it wasn't just in the weather. It was in how he led, how he calculated, how he chose not to feel. And for the first time in a long time, that cold began to crack. A few days had passed since Eli's last attack. He was stable now, sleeping more soundly, breathing easier. Linda looked less tense, but the fatigue still lingered in the corners of her eyes. Mason stopped by the store that evening. Not as a CEO, not as a man with an agenda, but as someone who, lately, found it harder to stay away. He saw her in the break room, tucking a worn notebook back into her bag during her short break. He hesitated, then stepped closer. "You ever think about going back to nursing school?" he asked quietly, his voice softer than usual. Linda looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Then she smiled, not with joy, but with a kind of resignation. "I filled out the application 3 times," she said. "But every time I was about to send it in, Eli would need something. An inhaler refill, a new prescription, another visit." She shook her head slightly. "I couldn't choose a dream if it meant my kid would sleep colder that month." Mason didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. Because, in his world, dreams were only about ambition, never about survival. That night, he sat in his apartment, laptop open in front of him. He stared at the company's internal scholarship portal. It had been designed to give frontline employees the chance to pursue higher education. Very few used it. Fewer still had anyone to recommend them. He began to type. Nominee: Linda Thompson. Reason for nomination: some people are born to heal. They just haven't had the chance to wear the uniform. He didn't list his name. There was no need for that. He didn't want gratitude. He just wanted to open a door that had stayed locked for too long. A week later, during the company's internal quarterly meeting, Mason sat at the head of the boardroom table, facing the same executives who had once admired his ability to cut clean and fast. The topic was store closures. One executive clicked through a presentation, stopping on the slide marked, "Store 481, underperforming, closure recommended." Mason didn't flinch, not at first. But when the floor opened for approval, he said firmly, "I'm pulling this location off the list." There was a beat of silence. One director blinked. "Mason, that location is in the red." "It's not that simple," Mason replied. "A small store doesn't always mean small value." Another executive raised a brow. "You said yourself we can't save everyone." Mason's gaze didn't waver. "We are not here to save everyone, but we are here to see them. And sometimes, a store is more than a profit line. Sometimes, it's the only thing keeping a family warm." No one responded. Because no one expected the man who used to speak in margins and metrics to suddenly speak in warmth. Later that night, Linda